Scottie Barnes has been one of the most productive freshmen in college basketball for Florida State, but he remains one of the draft's biggest enigmas. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. After playing for one of the best high school teams in recent history, Scottie Barnes followed in the footsteps of the likes of Devin Vassell or Patrick Williams and committed to Florida State. Barnes has been one of the best freshmen in college basketball under head coach Leonard Hamilton, winning ACC Freshman of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year. Barnes has great measurements for an NBA forward at 6'9", 227 pounds, with a 7'2" wingspan. The catcher? He's been playing point guard for Florida State, and in the NBA, we're not too sure where or how he will play. Let's start with what sets Scottie Barnes apart: his passing. Barnes is a highly skilled passer at 6'9". He always plays with his head up and is capable of making reads that even more traditional point guards do not regularly make. Barnes averaged 4 assists per game and assisted around 32% of Florida State's made baskets while he was on the floor. He has a legit case to be considered the best passer in the 2021 NBA draft. I also want to highlight the ability that Barnes has to break defenses down. Even though his passes here don't lead to the outright assist, Barnes makes the first move that leads to the opposing defense collapsing. His baseline drives and dishes allow Florida State to make the extra pass and then get a good look from three. Speaking of threes, Barnes is great at finding open perimeter shooters. Like I said, Barnes always has his head up, looking for the next pass. I'll have more on this aspect of his game later, but Barnes creates threes for Florida State despite not being a shooter himself. In this aspect, he reminds me of Ben Simmons, who is also a non-shooter but is always among the NBA's best in creating triples. Teammates probably really enjoy playing with Barnes. He is definitely a facilitator and a pass-first player above all other things. I like this pass here against Boston College, as Barnes keeps his defender on his hip and then fires an on-target ball for a corner three. This read against Virginia is also very nice. Barnes attracts two defenders, sees that the weak side is open, and hits the one-handed pass for the three. Or here, Barnes drives baseline while maintaining good body control to not commit the offensive foul, and finds the shooter on the perimeter. Barnes is also capable of executing passes in pick-and-roll situations. This is something that you will not find a lot of guys his size doing, but Barnes is pretty comfortable operating with screens. One thing he can do that touches on what I mentioned just now is using a screen to find a wide open three-point shooter. Barnes is also able to find bigs or rollers out of the pick and roll. It helps that Florida State tends to have personnel that can play above the rim, but the passes here from Barnes are right on target anyways. This is something that we might see more of in the NBA with better spacing. One last facet of Barnes' passing that is worth mentioning is how he plays in the open court. Barnes is a great passer in transition, which is a necessity given what the rest of his game looks like. More on that later, but one of Barnes' first calling cards in the NBA should be transition offense. Barnes is able to push the ball off opponent misses and lead the break himself. He can connect with outlet passes from his own half of the court and take Florida State to the opposing rim in a heartbeat. Barnes' passing is great and fun to watch, but it still has some areas of improvement that he needs to work on, especially if he wants to be the lead ball handler for a team. Barnes has a positive assist-to-turnover ratio, almost assisting twice as much as he loses the ball. However, there are still times when he is too loose with his passing. These turnovers are not indicators of negative feel or bad reads, but I'm not sure we can just amount them to something like lack of concentration either. One thing I've noticed is that Barnes can sometimes get sped up when trying to pass the ball on the move, leading to turnovers such as this one against Clemson. Other times, he tries to squeeze a ball through a tight window that just isn't there, or into an area that the opponent can converge on. The thing is, when Barnes has turnovers, they can be really ugly, such as here against UNC. Or here against Pittsburgh, Barnes picks up his dribble prematurely, cannot deal with a really soft double team, and then does not put enough tension on the skip pass. Finally, this against Boston College just makes you want to close your eyes. Another thing that might be a little nitpicky but I think needs to be noted is Barnes' accuracy. There are times when Barnes makes the right read and connects with his opponent, but his pass is just a little bit off target. That lack of pinpoint accuracy makes it so that his teammate, or just Florida State in general, cannot take advantage of the positive situation Barnes tried to generate with his pass. Another thing to consider when it comes to playing in the NBA is that the margin for error drastically goes down. When everyone is longer, taller, more athletic, and in better shape, you cannot afford to be slightly off with your passing. But going back to Barnes in the open court, that is largely his MO right now when it comes to scoring. Barnes is tough to stop in transition. His size means you don't want to get in front of him, and his frame is already pretty developed with strong arms and wide shoulders. Barnes can get out quickly given his long strides and functional handle. In these situations, Barnes also has plenty of time to load up and get off the floor for some highlight-worthy dunks, such as this one against North Carolina. However, you watch Barnes play, and sometimes you're left scratching your head wondering as to how he averaged over 10 points per game. Barnes teeters on the precipice of being a complete non-factor in the half court. He really struggles to score against a set defense, and I honestly don't think that can be overstated enough. When the game slows down, the only resource Barnes has is some sort of jump stop into a push shot or a floater. That would be nice if it wasn't for the fact that Barnes has shown little to no touch with these shots. Barnes hasn't done much better down low either. We did not get to see a lot of Barnes posting up because he was handling the ball quite a bit, but his lack of half-court scoring showed. Barnes was bigger and longer than a lot of the defenders that he tried to post up, but he ran into two issues. The first was a lack of creativity, since he really just tried to gain position and then go into a hook shot. The second was just a matter of not having the soft touch needed to score. In terms of pull-up shooting, you can probably imagine how things went. Barnes should be considered a non-threat from both beyond the arc and in the mid-range. This is why I said that I'm sometimes not even sure how Barnes got to over 10 points per game. He can't dominate smaller defenders in the half court, and evidently he cannot create his own shot off the dribble. But those deficiencies on attack could maybe be overlooked if Barnes made his threes. Barnes shot under 30% from deep in his freshman year at Florida State, which is a very poor number, especially combined with his 62% from the free throw line. The indicators all point to the likelihood of it being a while before Barnes can even be respected as a shooter. In the future, he at least needs to be able to drill spot-up threes when he gets presented with the chance. I don't think there is anything too wrong with Barnes' shot from the waist up, but if you look at his legs, they are almost completely stiff. Barnes' lower body is really inflexible when he gets into his shot, and I have a feeling that's not helping him at all. If Barnes is able to get his three-point percentage up, even if just to something like 33 or 36%, that would open up the rest of his game. But if he can't shoot, then opponents will feel comfortable sagging off of him. That would probably make Barnes close to unplayable early on in his NBA career, since he would not be able to pass, shoot, or drive. At this point, I don't blame you if you're wondering how Barnes can score, or if he can even do that, so let's get into it. A lot of the points Barnes scored this year came in the paint. That sounds like a good thing, and to some extent it is, but I'm not really at ease given the nature of the buckets that Barnes got. Something I've often seen mentioned is that only 23% of Barnes' makes at the rim were assisted. That is true, but I think it's a little bit misleading. Barnes took some really high chance shots right at the basket that I'm not too sure about. For instance, some of these makes came off fluky feeling offensive rebounds. Sure, the ball ends up in the hands of Barnes, but he didn't really do anything to ensure that. Other times, he would miss a shot and collect his own rebound to score. It's nice that he has a solid second jump, but it's not an elite one and the margins become smaller in the NBA. Lastly, Barnes might have just been bigger than his opponent and overwhelmed him using that, despite not showing any real craftiness. Still, it's clear that Barnes is at his best when he's getting downhill and into the proximity of the basket. If he isn't facing a set defense, then his handle at his size becomes too much to handle at the college level. Barnes doesn't have the most creative handle, but it's tight enough for him to use it on these straight line drives. However, these situations will not always exist in the games that matter most. Something else that gives me a lot of pause with Barnes is his athleticism. He is not a bad athlete, as we'll get into in a couple of minutes, but he's not a good vertical athlete either. Barnes lacks explosiveness and burst. There are times where he seems downright slow even. Although his handle is solid, he is definitely not a blow-by threat. Barnes cannot just turn on the turbo and get to the basket. On top of that, he can't explode going up either. In that regard, he reminds me a little bit of Cam Reddish. Barnes is very much a below-the-rim athlete. We've seen his dunks, but those tend to be with plenty of time, and obviously, it would be a huge worry if a 6'9" guy touted as a top recruit was unable to get up for a dunk once in a while. If Barnes cannot shoot, and he can only drive on a consistent basis when he's afforded plenty of time and space, then I think that's fair cause for concern. For all the concerns I have about Scottie Barnes on offense, I don't have many on defense. In addition to being one of the best passers in his class, he is likely the most versatile defender. I expect his most immediate NBA value to come on this end of the floor. Barnes is the type of player who relishes playing D. He has incredible stamina, able to guard hard and up close all the way until the end of a game. Barnes is a highly switchable defender. Florida State had him defending guards a lot, but I expect him to play up and down positions on D in the NBA. There just aren't many 6'9" guys with the ability and instincts that Barnes possesses on defense. Obviously, Barnes has long arms, but beyond that, he is willing to get down in a stance, low to the floor, and flip his hips seemingly at will. Barnes is a pest on D. You can't get through him or around him most of the time. He can shadow movements with insulting ease, it seems like. Even when you seemingly have to step on Barnes, he can make up the distance with his length and bother your shot even when it seems like he's out of the picture. Here against Louisville, the guard might think that he has Barnes leaning after the crossover, but Barnes just flips his hips again, stays in front, and forces the turnover. Barnes can stay with his man no matter what. He can try faking one way, using a power dribble the other, it doesn't matter. Barnes reads his attackers in an instant and almost always reacts accordingly. Look at this relentlessness against Pittsburgh. Barnes is picking him up full court and backpedaling, but the guard just can't shake him regardless of what he tries. One last example I want to call attention to is here against UNC. Barnes executes the switch, bothers the ball handler with active hands, changes directions, and forces an impossible shot. I said that attackers can't get past Barnes or through Barnes. I already covered what I meant by the former, so here's what I mean by not being able to get through him. Even when attackers try to drive on Barnes, they can't get a single moment of daylight. Barnes is there to snuff everything out all the time. His lateral quickness is incredible, as is his know-how in not fouling despite being so close to his man. Right off the bat, Barnes should be able to switch multiple positions in the NBA, but at his defensive apex, I think he will be able to wreak havoc all over the floor. Barnes can create chaos using his defensive instincts and physical properties. His 7'2" wingspan means that Barnes is always closer than you think. He is able to collect deflections, steals, and just generally harass and smother opponents. Barnes averages about 3.5 steals per 100 possessions, while on a 3.6 steal percentage. That means that Barnes gets more steals than your average, everyday college basketball player. Ultimately, I think the endgame will be Barnes becoming one of the NBA's best help defenders while also being very good on the ball. I wish we had gotten to see Barnes feature as a rim protector a bit more, but that was complicated given that he was defending guards a lot. Some of his NBA future will be predicated on that though, so it will be interesting to see how he adapts once he's in the league. The only noteworthy area of improvement I see right now is that Barnes can sometimes be a little bit too upright on defense. Maybe that is because of his high hips, but he can occasionally be caught in a bad position. Still, it's not a big problem, and the good outweighs the bad by a mile. Alright, so I'm going to try to keep this brief because I think this has been one of the most extensive videos on floor and ceiling so far. But clearly, Barnes is quite difficult to figure out, especially when it comes to seeing how he will project at the NBA level. The upside with Barnes is that you have a 6'9" ball handler who can facilitate for others while probably being able to switch 1 through 4 and eventually maybe even on some 5s. I know that I've seen a lot of conversation about Barnes becoming a small ball center in the NBA, but I'm not ready to project him as that right now based on what we've seen at college. Offensively though, Barnes remains quite a work in progress, to the point where I'm genuinely not sure if he will ever be able to score in the half court in an NBA setting. Barnes is close to being a non-shooter. He shoots below 30% from 3 and he doesn't make his free throws either. That's without mentioning that his floaters don't go in as well. If Barnes cannot shoot the ball, then I don't think he will be able to drive or create, which lessens his upside severely. Ultimately, it's going to be very interesting to see which team takes Barnes, where he will go in the draft, and how they will develop him. Right now, personally, I have Barnes more towards the second half of the lottery, rather than as the top 6 or 7 pick like I've seen him go in other places. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of Scottie Barnes. And if you like the channel, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.